My friends, in a world that never stops speaking, there is a forgotten power that waits quietly in the shadows. Silence. We often believe that the louder we are, the more we are heard, that the more we talk, the more we impress, that if we don't speak up, we will be left behind. But life, in its deepest wisdom, doesn't always reward the noisiest voice. It honors the heart that learns when to be silent. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you listened, really listened? Not to respond, not to argue, not to win, but to simply understand? There's a reason why we have 2 ears and 1 mouth. We were designed to listen more and speak less. Silence is not weakness. Silence is wisdom in action. The person who can stay calm, composed, and centered. Even when provoked, even when misunderstood, that person holds real power. Sometimes the most profound growth happens in the quietest moments. Its seed does not shout while it grows. It stays buried, silent, pakeable, and one day head breaks the surface, strong and unshakable. Similarly, our own transformation often begins in silence. In moments of prayer, meditation, solitude, or reflection, it is in stillness that we begin to hear not the world but our soul. But we are so addicted to noise, external and internal. We scroll endlessly, argue relentlessly, and speak without pause. We interrupt not only others, but our own peace. And in doing so, we miss the gentle voice of life itself, whispering, "Wait, watch, learn." There are 3 situations in life where silence becomes your greatest friend. First, when you are angry. In that moment when your emotions burning hot and your tongue is ready to explode, be silent. Because words spoken in anger don't just hurt others, they burn bridges you may never rebuild. Anger speaks quickly. Wisdom waits. When you learn to be silent in your anger, you begin to master yourself. Second, when others criticize you unfairly. It's so tempting to defend ourselves, to strike back, to prove a point. But not every opinion requires your reaction. Not every battle is worth fighting. Sometimes your silence says more than your defense ever could. Sometimes your peace confuses the one trying to disturb it. And third, when you are in the presence of something sacred, whether that's nature, beauty, love, or God, words fail to express what the heart feels. In those moments, silence becomes a language of its own. A sunrise doesn't need applause. A mother's embrace doesn't need a speech. A prayer whispered silently can carry more weight than 1,000 loud ones. And you know something magical happens when you start to practice silence? You begin to observe. You notice the small things. You hear your own thoughts more clearly. You recognize who deserves your energy and who doesn't. You start focusing less on proving yourself and more on improving yourself, because you realize life is not a contest of who speaks the most. It's about who listens the deepest. Not who argues best, but who understands the most. Not who reacts the fastest, but who responds the wisest. Silence is not the absence of sound. It is the presence of awareness. It teaches you that sometimes the universe doesn't need your commentary. It needs your attention. Many people ask, "How do I get everything in life?" The answer might surprise you. You don't get everything by shouting for it. You get it by becoming the kind of person who can handle it. And that kind of person is built in silence, in discipline, humility, and quiet reflection. So the next time life gives you an opportunity to react, pause, be silent. The next time you feel the need to post, to respond, to fight back, pause, be silent. The next time you feel lost, confused, unsure, don't rush for answers. Sit with the questions, be silent. Because in that stillness, life begins to align. People reveal themselves. Truth becomes clearer. Strength returns. You don't need to scream to be strong. You don't need to be loud to be wise. You don't need to be seen to be successful. Learn to be silent. Not because you have nothing to say, but because you're wise enough to know when to say it. And that is when life begins to give you everything. In a world where everyone wants to be heard, where volume is mistaken for value, silence is often misunderstood. People tend to associate silence with weakness, submission, or lack of confidence. But the truth is, Silence is one of the deepest expressions of strength. It is not the timid who choose silence, it is the strong. It takes great inner control to remain quiet when your emotions beg to speak, when your pride urges you to respond, and when your ego craves validation. The loudest voice is not always the most powerful. Often, it's the quiet one that carries the most weight. Think about it. When you are provoked, when someone says something unfair, when a situation is tense, what is the easier path? To react immediately, to fire back, to prove a point. But silence, that requires restraint. It requires you to rise above the situation rather than sink into it, and that rising above is a reflection of inner discipline and wisdom. True strength, but measured not by how loudly you can speak, but anyone can shout it in silence. Anyhow aloud you can shout in anger. Anyone can argue to defend their pride, but it takes a mature soul to withhold their words, to choose peace over proving something, to understand that not every battle needs to be fought with the sword of speech. Silence in those moments is not passivity, it's power with purpose. There is a reason why people with true authority don't feel the need to talk all the time. Their presence carries weight. The silence that carries weight. This creates the space that demands respect. Because they don't waste their energy explaining themselves to everyone, they conserve it for what matters. Their silence is not emptiness, it's depth. Silence also reflects confidence. When you know who you are, you don't feel the urge to convince others. When you're grounded in your values, you're not shaken by temporary noise. You understand that the truth doesn't need defending in every moment. It will reveal itself with time. And so you stand quietly, not because you don't have something to say, but because you know when to say it, and when to simply let things be. People often misread silence. They think you are avoiding conflict, that you're afraid, that you're unsure. But let them think. The one who is truly secure has nothing to prove. They don't trade their peace for public opinion. They don't react to every insult or engage in every argument. They have learned that silence sometimes speaks louder than 1,000 well-formed words. And in relationships, silence can be a gift. When a loved one is hurting, you don't always need to offer advice or solutions. Sometimes your silent presence says, "I'm here, I care." That kind of silence is healing. It's sacred. It doesn't need explanation or interpretation. It just is. And in moments of pain or confusion, that kind of silence becomes more comforting than any sentence ever could. Even in your personal growth, silence is essential. When you're constantly surrounded by noise, opinions, distractions, media, you can't hear your own soul. You lose touch with your inner compass. But in silence, clarity returns. You hear your thoughts. You recognize your fears. You confront your emotions. And slowly you begin to reconnect with your purpose. That inner work, done silently, is what produces lasting strength on the outside. It's easy to look brave when you're speaking. It's harder to stay brave when you're silent. But the more you practice it, the more you'll notice its impact. You'll find that silence is not an absence of words. It's the presence of power. It's what allows you to move through life with grace, to face storms with calm, and to navigate chaos with wisdom. So don't let the world tell you that being silent makes you weak. Don't fall into the trap of constant commentary. Let your silence confuse the ones who expect you to break. Let it protect your energy, preserve your dignity, and strengthen your mind. Because silence is not the retreat of the weak. It is the chosen path of the strong. Transformation doesn't come in the noise of the crowd, in the clamor of opinions, or in the chaos of compans in movement. It happens in stillness, in the moments when the world quiets down, when the distractions fall away, and when you're left alone with your own thoughts. There lies the space where growth begins. The world tries to convince you that progress is always loud, always fast, always visible. But the truth is, the deepest changes are invisible at first. They are slow, quiet, almost imperceptible, like a seed pushing even knows its soil before stillness is not in act there. Stillness, it's not inactivity, was intentional pause. It's the moment when you choose to step back, reflect, breathe, and listen, not to others, but to your inner world. In that silence, you start to notice things you never saw before, patterns, reactions, wounds, desires, and in recognizing them, you begin to shift. You start to grow, not because someone told you to, but because you begin to see the truth for yourself. Think about nature. The most profound transformation of a caterpillar into a butterfly doesn't happen while it's flying or while it's showcasing its wings. It happens inside a dark, still cocoon, away from sight, away from sound, away from the outside world, alone, silent, unseen. Yet it is within that stillness that it is completely restructured from the inside out. That's what real transformation looks like. In our lives, we often confuse movement with progress. We think that if we are busy, if our calendars are full, if we are always doing something, then we must be evolving. But busyness can sometimes be the enemy of growth. It keeps us distracted. It keeps us reactive. It keeps us from asking the deeper questions. Who am I becoming? What am I holding on to that no longer serves me? What am I avoiding by staying constantly distracted? Stillness invites those questions. It is uncomfortable, yes. Because in stillness, there is no noise to cover your fears, no audience to impress, no tasks to hide behind. It is just you and the truth. But facing that truth is the doorway to transformation. It is the beginning of healing, of forgiveness, of clarity. People who fear stillness often fear themselves. They fear what they might find when the noise stops, but avoiding that confrontation only delays the growth that life is patiently waiting to offer. Silence may seem empty, but it's full of wisdom. Stillness may seem passive, but it's power in waiting. Every breakthrough, every awakening, every new chapter in life begins with a moment of deep inner quiet. In stillness, you begin to listen, not to the expectations of the world, but to the whispers of your soul. You start to recognize the difference between what is urgent and what is important. You stop reacting and begin responding. You stop chasing approval and start building authenticity. You move from confusion to clarity, not because someone handed you the answers, but because you gave yourself permission to be still long enough to discover them. The world moves fast, but that doesn't mean you have to. Transformation doesn't rush. It doesn't shout. It doesn't compete. It unfolds. It deepens. It evolves quietly and deliberately. And the more you embrace stillness, the more you'll notice it happening, not in grand gestures, but in subtle shifts, in the way you no longer feel triggered by what once upset you, in the peace you begin to carry, even when things around you remain uncertain, in the inner confidence that starts to replace the old self-doubt. Don't underestimate the power of taking a pause. Don't think you're falling behind just because you're not shouting your progress to the world. Sometimes the loudest noise is the silence of someone rebuilding themselves quietly. Sometimes the strongest people are those who sit alone, reflect deeply, and change direction. Not because they were forced to, but because they finally listened to what life was trying to tell them. Transformation doesn't need an audience. It needs awareness. And awareness is born in stillness. So find your quiet. Honor your silence. Trust that when everything slows down, something sacred begins to rise. The real you, the better you, the wiser you. It's all waiting to emerge, not through noise, but through the still, small space where truth lives and transformation begins. One of the greatest freedoms you can give yourself is the permission to not respond to everything. In a world that constantly demands reactions through messages, comments, arguments, expectations, there is immense power in choosing silence over speaking, peace over proving, and clarity over chaos. You don't need to comment on every situation, defend every misunderstanding, or explain yourself to every person who misjudges you. Sometimes the best answer is no answer at all. You don't owe the world your energy every time it knocks on your door. You don't have to attend every argument you're invited to. Not every opinion is worthy of your voice. Not every misunderstanding requires a correction. And not every question is asked to understand you. Some are asked to trap you, to provoke you, to drain you. In those moments, silence is not avoidance. It's intelligence. It's wisdom. It's a sign that you value your peace more than the temporary satisfaction of being right. Life will always present opportunities to react through people who challenge you, criticize you, or misunderstand your intentions. But the mature soul learns to pause. It learns to ask, is this worth my energy? Will my response bring more light or more heat? Will it solve anything or simply add to the noise? Most of the time, you'll find that your silence says more than your words ever could. There's a deep misunderstanding in our culture that silence equals weakness. That if you don't defend yourself, you must be guilty. That if you don't speak up, you must not care. But the truth is, it takes great inner strength to remain calm when provoked. It takes maturity to withhold your voice when your ego is screaming for validation. It takes courage to trust that your worth isn't defined by how loudly you speak, but by how wisely you respond. Or don't. You don't have to justify your decisions to those who were never part of your journey. You don't have to explain your silence to those who never cared to listen to your words in the first place. Your value does not decrease because someone else fails to understand it. And your peace is not negotiable. It's sacred. Guard it. Protect it. Don't hand it over to every critic who demands a piece of you. Sometimes people will say things just to see how you react. They don't want clarity. They want chaos. They're not interested in your perspective. They're invested in pulling you into their storm. That's when you must remember. You are not obligated to play every game someone invites you into. You can walk away. You can stay silent. You can choose peace. And in doing so, you rise above the noise. The mind that constantly needs to explain, prove, or defend is often a restless one. But the soul that is anchored in truth finds peace in restraint. It knows that time reveals character. That truth rises with patience. That you don't have to chase validation when you already walk in purpose. Not responding doesn't mean you don't feel. It means you're protecting what's important. It means you've outgrown the need for surface level approval. It means you're learning to conserve your energy for what truly matters. Every time you choose not to respond, you're choosing growth over gratification. You're saying, my peace is worth more than this argument. And it's not just about external conversations. Sometimes the things you don't respond to are your own thoughts. Every thought doesn't deserve your belief. Every fear doesn't need your agreement. Every internal critic doesn't deserve your attention. When you learn to quiet the noise inside your head, you begin to find clarity. When you stop reacting to every anxious thought, you begin to gain control. Mastering the art of not responding is not apathy. It's wisdom in motion. It's understanding that your silence is not emptiness. It's elevation. The one who can stay silent when others shout is not afraid. They're focused. They're tuned in to something deeper, something greater. They're not distracted by noise because they've discovered the strength in stillness. So don't let the pressure to react rob you of your peace. Don't let the expectation to speak pull you away from your power. Sometimes, the most profound statement you can make is no statement at all. You don't have to respond to everything. You're not here to explain yourself to everyone. You're here to grow, to rise, to walk in wisdom. And sometimes that means staying silent, staying still, and staying true to yourself. Silence is not just the absence of noise, it is the presence of awareness. In a world filled with endless distractions, constant opinions, and never-ending movement, silence becomes a rare and powerful space. A space where you can finally hear what your heart has been trying to say all along. When you embrace silence, even for a few minutes, Something within you begins to shift. The mind slows down, the heart softens, and your awareness begins to rise to the surface like sunlight through water. You start to notice things you once ignored. You begin to feel things more deeply. You become more present, more alert, more in tune with the truth that lives beneath all the noise. We often think clarity comes from seeking more information, from asking more questions, from getting more answers. But sometimes clarity comes not from adding more, but from subtracting, not from speaking more, but from listening deeply. When you allow yourself to be silent, not just outwardly, but inwardly, you give your awareness room to breathe. You give your intuition space to speak. And what once seemed confusing becomes clearer, not because the world changed, but because you stopped spinning long enough to actually see it. Silence doesn't give you new eyes. It simply cleans the lens through which you were already looking. It washes away the fog of urgency and reveals the simple truths you've always known but forgotten. It's easy to get caught up in the momentum of doing, of fixing, of solving, but when you pause, when you sit in silence, you realize that you've been rushing past your own wisdom, that many of the answers you've been searching for outside have been quietly waiting within you all along. The more time you spend in silence, the more you start to recognize the patterns of your mind, the fears that control you, the beliefs that limit you, the desires that drive you. You become more aware of how you react, how you avoid, how you resist. And in that awareness, transformation begins. You stop being a prisoner of your unconscious habits. You begin to respond rather than react. You start to see life as it is, not as your emotions distort it to be. This kind of awareness is not taught in schools. It is cultivated in silence. The greatest thinkers, spiritual teachers, and enlightened souls have always spoken of the value of silence, not just as a discipline, but as a doorway to presence, a doorway to the soul, a doorway to clarity that can't be found in words or books or lectures, but only through direct experience. When you sit in silence, you begin to see that you are not your thoughts. You are the one observing them. And in that realization, you unlock a level of peace that no external validation can ever offer. Silence doesn't demand anything from you. It doesn't push, it doesn't pull, it doesn't perform. It simply invites. It invites you to come home to yourself, to return to that quiet, sacred place within where you are whole, where you are enough, where you are loved, not because of what you do, but because of who you are. And the more you visit that place, the more you carry it with you into the noise. You begin to speak with more intention. You begin to listen with more compassion. You begin to move through the world with a calm that cannot be faked or forced. In silence, you discover that awareness is not something you create. It's something you uncover. It was always there, buried beneath the surface of your rushing mind. Clarity is not something you achieve, it's something you allow. And the moment you give yourself the gift of silence, both begin to rise. Awareness and clarity, hand in hand, guiding you back to your center. You do not need to travel far to find peace. You don't need to chase endless solutions to feel whole. All you need to do is be still. Sit with yourself. Listen, not to the world, but to your own breath, your own heartbeat, your own spirit. Let silence become your sanctuary. Let it cleanse the dust from your perception. Let it return you to what matters. Because in that stillness, in that sacred quiet, you will find a clarity deeper than words and a knowing stronger than doubt. Silence is not empty. It's full of everything you've been seeking. The universe is always listening, not to the noise of your desperation, but to the quiet strength of your discipline. There is a rhythm to everything, a frequency that aligns with peace, patience, and focus. When your mind is loud, restless, distracted by doubt, the signals you send out into the world become scattered. But when your mind is quiet, when it is centered, intentional, and disciplined, you become like a still lake, reflecting clarity, purpose, and alignment. The universe does not respond to chaos, it responds to order, and that order begins within. A disciplined mind is not one that suppresses emotion or ignores challenges. It's a mind that has learned to direct its energy with intention rather than impulse. It's the mind that wakes up each morning and chooses focus over fear, consistency over comfort, and faith over frustration. There's something incredibly powerful about a person who knows how to sit still, who knows how to delay gratification, who knows how to listen more than they speak. That kind of person radiates a quiet confidence that doesn't need to announce itself. The universe mirrors back the energy you bring into it. If your thoughts are anxious, rushed, or reactive, you create more of the same experiences. But when your mind is disciplined, when you commit to daily growth, to spiritual practices, to intentional silence, you begin to tune in to something higher. You move from chasing to attracting, from controlling to flowing, from forcing to allowing. And in that shift, everything changes. Opportunities start to find you. The right people show up. Doors begin to open, not because you pushed them, but because you were prepared to walk through them when they did. A quiet mind is not an idle mind, it's a focused one. It's not filled with aimless wandering thoughts, but anchored in presence and purpose. You begin to understand that discipline is a form of love, not restriction. It's the love you give to your future self by making wise decisions today. It's the structure you create that allows your creativity to flourish. It's the boundaries you set that protect your peace. And in that space of calm, the universe takes notice. There is a reason why some of the most successful and spiritually aligned people on this planet value stillness and discipline, because they've learned that external chaos can't disrupt an internal sanctuary. They've trained their minds to remain rooted even when the winds of uncertainty blow. They don't respond to every distraction, and they don't allow urgency to dictate their direction. Their life becomes a reflection of their inner order. That is not coincidence. That is alignment. When your thoughts are scattered, your energy is scattered. But when your thoughts are focused, your energy becomes magnetic. The universe doesn't need you to beg. It needs you to align, and alignment comes through the quiet discipline of daily choices. What you think, what you say, what you feed your mind, how you speak to yourself, how you show up even when no one is watching. These are the silent forces that shape your destiny. There is a sacred strength in those who practice calm. They don't crumble under pressure because they've trained for the storms in silence. They've built habits when no one applauded. They've nurtured faith when there was no proof. They've stayed grounded, not because life was easy, but because they chose discipline over drama, peace over panic. And because of that, life begins to meet them with grace, not because they demanded it, but because they were ready to hold it. Don't underestimate the power of a mind that's been trained to stay still in a noisy world. Don't dismiss the process of daily self-discipline because it feels boring or slow. Every small act of control, every moment of intentional thought, every choice to stay focused when it would be easier to give in, that is you setting the frequency for your future. That is you telling the universe, I'm not just wishing for more, I'm becoming more. And the universe always responds to who you are, not just what you want. So quiet the noise, be intentional, train your mind like a garden, pull the weeds, water the roots, and sit in stillness long enough to witness the growth. The universe isn't ignoring you, it's waiting for you to get in tune. And once you do, you'll be amazed at what starts to flow in, not by force, but by alignment. Because the universe doesn't respond to panic, it responds to presence. It doesn't react to noise. It responds to the quiet, disciplined mind that dares to believe, prepare, and wait with grace.